I mean, sometimes you really should just use your strongest card before, you know, they have a chance to react to it.
This coming from the lady who sicked a golden wolf on her sister without even fighting her first.
Well, yeah.
Her voice cold and aloof, she was completely unscathed. The mage stood in the snowfield, not a single speck of dirt on her overcoat. Just before the bullet reached Touko, she deflected it with magical energy of the same level. Aoko could only stare at the scene before her. The negation of her magecraft hadn't shocked her, though. Leaf-like objects floated behind her sister. Aoko stared like she was living a nightmare. Countless magic crests poured out from Touko's back.
Crests?
How did you get spare First of all, how did you get magic crests?
That...
Like, circuits I understand, but where did you get crests from?
That would mean she killed a lot of mages to take their family crests.
Yeah!
That's a concern.
It all happened in an instant. The magic bullet approaching like a tsunami, Touko lightly snapped her fingers, causing a stream of letters to rush out from behind her. Text became art. Golden flowers bloomed. There must have been hundreds. All sorts of magecraft from even beyond Western Europe.
Yeah, other people's magecraft?
The kind normally carved into the flesh of a mage.
Oh, yeah.
The kind Touko Aozaki shouldn't possess. The kind only followers of those schools would know. Blossoming magic crests brighter than the moon. Inscribed in the air, they formed a totem pole, a guardian beast to protect Touko. Touko, the fuck did you do?
How many people did she kill?
Now I have butterfly wings made of tree leaves made of other people's magic crests.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
I just let Alice beat the hell out of me for no reason.
Or
earlier.
maybe that trick wouldn't have worked against the golem.
Touko's expression was steely. Victory was in her grasp, and there was no room to rest on her laurels.
Yeah, the near back of the house, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly a good one.
持ち上げるじゃない。何？騙された負け惜しみ？
You're just bitter.
いや、ただの自画自賛だよ。何しろ今のバージョンは私とマインスターの合作だ。趣味に興じすぎてあれこれと機能を足してしまったと今更ながら悔いているところさ。
They added functions to it, huh?
その後、青子に見せかけて私に向かってきたのは例のコマドリ。それに気を取られている間の大規模な魔術の発動。私の魔眼はアリスが防ぎ、青子は攻撃だけに専念する。組み立ては悪くはない。
If it wasn't me, that might have worked.
Touko recounted their strategy, sharing her impressions as she went. Aoko couldn't take her eyes off Touko's blossoming magic crests. They were so... endowed. Only Alice was paying close attention to Touko's words.
しかし、それもここまでだ。惜しいな、青子。わずか2年であれだけの魔術を使えるのなら、あと数年もすれば一流の射手になっていただろうに。
Aoko, why are you still using gun magecraft when you could have just got a gun?
Yeah.
Touko snapped her fingers again. The floating crests began to glow more brightly.
アリス、あれは何？
They're crests, Aoko. Aoko whispered to Alice standing next to her as she held her hand. She couldn't risk turning around. The second she took her eyes off Touko, the fight would be over.
見ての通り、魔術刻印よ。信じられないけど。
Okay, where did she get them? from other mages.
From people.
Alice's voice was filled with shock and discomfort. Aoko shared Alice's sentiment. Magic crests were passed down through a family line and took unique forms. At heart, they were merely personalized inscriptions and technically no different from grimoires. However, the reality was far different. Magecraft had no set form. Without a set shape, the ability to recreate mystics was itself flawed. To craft it into a form required an immeasurable investment of time and devotion. Magic crests were the crystallization of a family's desires and ambitions and proof of a successor's lineage.
Right.
Crests had no effects on their own, but they were the ultimate symbol of a family. If no mage was willing to imbue themselves with a crest, or lacked the resolve to merge with it, then the crest's meaning was lost. That was the key difference between a crest and a mere spellbook. Crests couldn't be shared, and imitating them was pointless. It only stood to reason, then, that even if the crest manifesting across Touko belonged to someone else, only the original owner could benefit from them.
That somehow...
あの刻印からの魔術で弾かれた。あれはもしかすると。
Searching for answers, Aoko squinted her eyes as she glared at Touko. She knew that copying a crest had no purpose. Only the original inheritor could invoke one. There was only one possible conclusion.
そう。肌に刻まず中空に浮かべてるのはそういうこと。
Aoko spat a curse at her sister. Touko nodded, pleased at her enemy's quick wit.
ああ、この体には合わないのでな。
Huh.
私の背後の空間に固定している。
I'll just do that, huh?
お前たちのように肉に刻んだ方がいいんだ。魔術の起動が一動作で済むんだから。だが実際に使用するのなら、こうするしかない。起動までの手順は一つ増えるが、マイナスばかりでもない。所詮は人事なんだね。痛みは全く感じない。
Unfortunately, the people they belong to, oh boy, they are in excruciating pain right now. And it seemed neither physically nor mentally. Aoko knew her sister was inhuman, but she never thought she'd go this far.
合うわけないじゃない。他人の魔術刻印を剥がしてるんだから、血筋の称号からして馴染むはずがないわ。
I guess not to the original owner, huh?
奪われた連中は死ぬこともできず、今もどこかに生かされているわけだ。刻印の持ち主が死んだら起動すらできないものね。それ。トウコさん、あなた。
非難される覚えはないんだが、私はかかる火の粉を払っただけだよ。向こうから戦いを挑んできたんだから、戦利品ぐらいは用意してもらわないと。まあ、中にはつまらない単語を口にしたバカ者もいるが、それはそれだ。むしろ優しいと思うけどね。私を殺しに来た連中をわざわざ生かしてあげてるんだから。
その魔術師たちがちゃんと人間の形をしてることを祈
I
る
don't
わ。
think a mage would normally be that concerned if they were okay.
お前ね、私を何だと思ってるんだ。
I mean, I am slightly curious.
I stored them in the basement of a church.
Or the basement of the school building, maybe? You had to bring them with
脳
you.
だけ保存とか、面倒だから100人ひとまとめにした肉塊とか、そんな手抜きなんぞするもの
I
か。
mean, mages do a lot of fucked up shit, Touko.
きちんとカフェを用意して、食事も娯楽も睡眠も自由に提供してるんだぞ。中には一生ここで暮らしたいなんて騒ぎ立てるバカもいるぐらいだ。
Touko's words were hardly believable, but it was clear her crests weren't copies. Alice's scowl deepened. What Touko had described had no discernible benefit in her mind. Why had she gone to the trouble of stealing others' magic crests? Oh, I don't know, because hers was stolen?
Or was never properly given to her? I don't know.
Well, that's what I mean. It was her crest as far as she was concerned. She just hadn't gotten it yet.
Yeah.
And then Aoko stole it.
Yeah.
Would have been more efficient to break down the crests into components and make replicas. For a skilled puppet master like Touko, she could have made a much more powerful puppet with those crests. Would have made a pawn loyal to her every command at that. Much more useful than any enslaved mage.
なんでそんなことを。そういう人なのよ、姉貴は。これで行くと決めたらそれしか目に入らない人なの。家庭より結果の人なの。ある日の話よ。テレビでピザの CM をやっててさ、私たちは唐突にあのデブ食を食べたくなった。
Right.
でも悲しいかな。一般家庭であるうちにあったのはサラミだけ。
Hey.
うちの実家、山奥にあるの知ってるでしょ。町まで行くのに1時間はかかる。中学1年だった私は我慢できなくて町まで行ったけど、ピザ屋なんか一軒もなくてとぼとぼ帰ったの。
Okay.
It was the tragedy of living in the countryside. Misaki, which had only recently gotten a conveyor belt sushi restaurant, wouldn't see a pizzeria for another 2 years.
Wow. Okay.
なのに骨折り損で家に帰ったら姉貴のやつ「おかえり」とか手を振ってピザ食べてやがったの。
Made some, I guess?
おせんべいを下地にしてみたわとか言って、外見たら鳥3羽と牛1頭丸々消えてて、ああこの女には10日交換とか手間とかお金の問題とかそういうの一切頭にないんだって思い知らされたわ。
Well, they formerly raised 3 chickens and a cow.
That's a lot of animals to give up for one piece of pizza, or even a full pizza.
Alice agreed that was pretty crazy.
そんな無茶なやつだからガンド打ちで目に見える傷跡を出そうなんて平気で考えるのよね。
Maybe a fin shot would be better?
あんなの
No,
ゲマ
Gander.
トリア一節分の栄唱で同じ効果を出せるのに、あくまで呪術にこだわるから空も飛べない人形になるのよ、バカ兄貴。
Are you mad the puppet couldn't fly?
The thought of the puppet doppelganger made her blood boil. It was clear to Aoko now that Touko had done it on purpose to annoy her. No, really? Touko furrowed her eyebrows at Aoko's verbal assault. She'd been stoic up until now, but speaking rudely about her prized puppet was crossing the line.
Oh, what? You actually cared about that
その人形
one?
に追い詰められたのはお前だったね。
Yeah, it gave her a lot of trouble.
それとゲマトリアはカバラの秘術だ。私はルーン専門だからお前のように広く浅く知識を広める気はないよ。まあもっともこの刻印の所有者の一人からケルトの結界を教わりはしたがね。
Okay.
Touko looked to the crest over her left shoulder. Its shine was ever radiant, proving that its magecraft was active.
これは城で祖父を封じ込めるのに使っていてね。
Oh, so you've already been home then.
犯人犯用のドルイド層を閉じ込めたと。
Is your grandfather actually half yokai?
そうだな。私では郵便ポストぐらいの大きさが限界か。ほら、昔お前が壊した赤いポスト。ちょうどあれぐらいの可愛い鳥小屋だよ。人間一人分をしまうには窮屈だろうが、祖父は肉体というより霊体に近い。
Well, seriously though, is your grandfather half
そっちの方
demon?
がふさわしいかもしれないね。
You have me really curious now.
Like, is he actually a Hanyo? I need to know.
Then, yeah, so you have demon blood?
Touko stifled a sinister laugh, her explanation chilling. Her cold veneer seemed to slip slightly when it came to her grandfather.
Yeah, she doesn't seem to like him very
Her
much.
smile betraying the long festering hatred she still clung to.
そういったわけでね。さきの青子の魔術を防いだので、この刻印もしばらくは使用不能なんだ。
And Aoko would make another one of those attacks, or
It
was
said
that
it
it?
used all of her magecraft for it.
Yeah, I don't
今の
know.
が本当の魔法だったなら、わずか3行の刻印では打ち消せなかっただろうに。青子、お前は僅差で負けたんだ。恥じることはないよ。じゃあ、そろそろ終わりにしよう。抵抗をするのは自由だが、ベオ相手にそれは辛いぞ。
Are you calling him?
Touko snapped her fingers one more time. The golden werewolf was hiding in the old school building. The signal to him echoed eerily through the surrounding woods. Before the echo stopped, Aoko shouted back at Alice.
"Itte, Alice!"
The order sounded like a reprimand, but Alice silently obeyed. Without hesitation, she left Aoko behind to handle Touko and made for the forest. If defeat was inevitable, it would be pointless for both of them to die. If one of them could survive, there could be a round 3. That was why Aoko decided to be the sacrificial pawn.
トウコ自身の切り札も分かったし、アリスが本調子になれば勝てない相手じゃないものね。
Maybe? At least you can fortify the mansion a little.
Aoko muttered bitterly to herself as Alice's feet crunched through the snow. Instead of cursing her own death, she cursed the fact that she wouldn't see Alice defeat Touko.
Yeah.
For what else was there to curse except this? Alice disappeared into the forest. Feeling her fellow mage's presence fade, Aoko continued to glare at her sister.
いつまでじらす気？私、待たされるのは好きじゃないんだけど。
Sure don't want to buy a little more time for Alice?
Speaking of waiting, the werewolf Touko had called was nowhere to be seen. It shouldn't have taken him more than a few seconds to come flying out of the old school building.
そうせくな。今赤ずきんを追っているところだ。
Yeah. Gonna cut off
老
Alice
子の彼
first.
女をそう例えるのはやや無理があるがね。
Her tone reeked of irony.
Yeah, it's already behind you.
The words traveled aimlessly across the schoolyard like a rambling announcement. Aoko stood frozen and dumbfounded. Everything Touko was saying seemed so far away from reality. Aoko was done with being fooled, so she turned around. The moonlight shining off the fallen snow allowed her to see far into the forest. From the white darkness, a lone boy came into view, walking toward her. He couldn't have been any taller than Aoko's chest, but he carried Alice over his shoulder with ease. As if she was nothing, he tossed her body upward. She arched through the air for several feet before dropping head first before Aoko's eyes.
Ow.
Her neck would snap on impact.
Whoop.
Even though she was wiser not to, Aoko reached out and caught her. Alice's light body weighed heavy as she fell into Aoko's arms. The stitches on her wounds tore, dyeing Aoko's arms crimson. Aoko gritted her teeth, fighting the pain that shot through her body and the sensation of the warm blood.
Alice, 無事。
Alice didn't respond, but Aoko could see where she was at least conscious. The werewolf must have ambushed her right after she ran into the woods. Alice bled heavily from where the wolf tore her abdomen open last night, just like he'd done to Aoko.
初めから森に潜ませていたとはね。
Yeah, he is a wolf.
Cursing her own carelessness, she gently lay Alice's body down. She set her sights on the blonde-haired boy, her new target.
つまりあれよね。甘く見ていたふりで初めから余裕なかったんだ。
Oh, there's a good shot of him.
Even in the face of Aoko's rage, he didn't stop smirking. He stared back at the girls, eyes gleaming, twinkling with excitement at the brutality to come. The blonde hair and green eyes she saw last night, and his effeminate features now, seemed ethereal, like he'd changed into a being from another planet.
ベオ、今日は食っていいぞ。
Touko's voice echoed from afar. The boy's grin broadened. Nobody could have expected what came next. Aoko rushed headfirst at the boy.
Yeah, that's pretty reckless.
Faster than the robin decoy, she sped, blood dripping from both arms. Touko watched wide-eyed at the spectacle. Alice could only lock on with vacant eyes as she lay helplessly on the ground. The werewolf boy was caught off guard by the prey becoming predator. Aoko crossed a 20-foot gap in a second before planting a foot in the snow. It arrested her momentum and pivoted her body like a top.
For a big kick?
Even if he instantly understood what was coming, the boy wouldn't be able to dodge in time. Using the momentum from her sprint, she pushed her leg into the ground and sprang up. With deadly timing, her roundhouse kick swung in a wide arc toward the boy's neck, sending an explosion of force to his brainstem.
Well, you touched him.
Yeah, those shoes are definitely not colorless, by the way. Just
yeah,
saying.
I know. Also, upskirt.
Yeah, but she's wearing shorts, so
yeah.
it's fine.
So I guess Alice thought to bring that at least.
It was an expert display of martial arts, strengthened by magical energy. She'd gotten the hang of close combat while fighting Touko's puppets. The violent kick was powerful enough to shatter a tree trunk. The boy did not move.
Well, yeah.
Aoko's right shin connected firmly and stopped. A shockwave rippled through his neck. It was the same feedback Aoko felt when she destroyed the puppet. Even if he wasn't defeated, she had to have severely damaged his spine.
If he was a normal human, sure.
She looked at him to confirm her kill. And the boy simply stared back at her, not even bothering to twitch an eyebrow.
お姉さんの右足は確か噛み切った方
Is it? I thought you bit her right thigh. Oh no, that yeah. Got the
それ
directions
で
mixed
首を
up.
狙ったのはすごいよね。女の人は本能的に自分の体をかばうものだってトウコさんは言ってたのに。けど残念。せっかくの勇気も無駄でした。僕の体毛の質はこの姿でも
You
変わ
have
らな
peach
い。
fuzz? Like on your face?
産毛だけでもお姉さんの蹴りを受け止めることはできる。
The only one hurt between the two was Aoko.
Yeah, the pain up her leg.
The leg she'd lodged in his neck was totally numb, like it had been chopped clean off with a hatchet.
それに少しだけ迷いがあったな。くっつけたばっかり
Oh
の足だ
wow,
から
like she
かば
actually
っ
could
た
have hurt
でしょ。
herself worse.
人間が僕の相手をするならそんなこと気にしちゃいけないのに。ああ、でも。
The boy smiled, basking in Aoko's shock and awe. She couldn't free her leg. No doubt as soon as she regained her footing, he would tear her stomach open.
どっちにしろミンチだから気にしても仕方がないよね。
Oh,
ほら、もったいない。せっかく治ったばかりなのに。
Aoko wasn't sure, but it felt like he'd sunk his finger into the flesh of her right leg.
ugh.
He was right about her leg. She barely had any feeling in it. It had been completely paralyzed after the attack last night and was now back in the same horrid state. Except this time, instead of being torn to pieces, it had been crushed to the bone.
Ow.
Her leg might have been numb, but just the look of it was enough to horrify her. The way it was crumpled. All that blood. Any normal person would have died from shock. As if thinking about something else, Aoko considered how cruel magic crests could be.
Yeah.
あれ、まだ目が死んでない。
Yeah. It keeps you alive through all kinds of stuff.
あんまり苦しめたくないんだけど。頑丈なのも考えものだよ。お
The boy thrust his hand out at Aoko's chest. Bad touch! Her consciousness flickered from the sudden pain of a stake. No, a child's fist piercing her torso.
Ugh. Yeah.
Wow, he's doing heart surgery the Gill way.
Yeah.
The scenery flew by. She soared through the air like a rag doll tossed away by a bored child.
Which is kind of literal, yeah.
Just like Alice a moment ago, she tumbled through the air and hit the ground hard. Her right leg was crushed, her chest caved in. It was as if her heart had been scooped out of her chest. Each gasp of breath left her wanting more. Was this what it was like to see stars? The terrifying part was the pain. It never let up. Desperately trying to suck in oxygen, she could still feel his fist. Leisurely, the boy strolled across the snow toward Aoko's broken body, his red tongue gliding over his lips. He stared at his prey, who was desperately trying to breathe, his eyes filled with glee. Aoko bit down the temptation to drift away, even though she could find no reason to fight on. The snow had broken her fall slightly, but her death was all but certain. The fist-sized crater in her chest and her mangled leg made sure of that.
Yeah, even your crest can only protect you from so much.
Even though she knew she was a broken mess, her magic crest frantically worked to resuscitate her heart. But why? The sight of Touko in the distance was the only thing that kept her conscious.
Why does Touko look surprised?
Her sister looked surprised for some reason.
Yeah.
Like she was witnessing some strange phenomenon. I wasn't like her. She's just shocked that there's some random high school boy standing behind them.
Oh, yeah. Maybe Soujuuro arrived?
Wondering what it was, Aoko tried to stay conscious. Feebly trying to raise her head, she looked to where Touko was staring. Why did she look like that when she was so close to victory?
Oh, we're going back a little bit. Yeah.
His heart was beating faster than normal. The fragmented and disturbing images kept returning, and he desperately pushed them to the back of his mind. They were thoughts that shook his resolve. He did his best to file them away into an unseen corner of his consciousness. Right now, he could only focus on controlling his breathing and his exertion?
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Those first three characters are very hard to read. Just stay calm, he repeated to himself. He hadn't stopped for a second since leaving the church, even without giving a thought to what he could do next. So many traffic lights, so many people. It was Christmas. There was no way he would find a taxi. Waiting for one wasn't an option. It was why he'd put his trust in his legs.
Just keep running, I guess?
He dashed through the city streets. He had to find a shorter route than last night. His heart was ready to jump out of his chest, pounding like a hammer against a fireball bell.
Oh, yeah, okay.
He had no intention of giving up yet, but he couldn't seem to calm himself down. Fortunately, he'd made his way to the cage elevator in front of the school. In his precarious condition, even surrender seemed too great of an effort to spare. Visions of horrible outcomes flashed through his mind.
Well, yeah.
No. Calm. He had to stay calm. That was his only weapon. That and surprise. His two weapons.
Yes.
Calm, surprise, and his hands. His three weapons.
And the power of imagination.
4 weapons.
Yes.
He was painfully aware he was powerless. The best thing he could do was to keep his head on straight. While he wrangled with his mind, his pulse seemed to quicken with every step. forest was faintly lit by the moon. That was more than enough on such a bare mountain. He followed the 2 sets of footprints. Ahead lay a situation he had nothing to do with, just like at the amusement park. Even if you go, there's nothing you can do for them. The only effect her admonishing words had was to hasten his pace.
Yeah, pace, not paste.
I mean, I read that correctly in my head. I just... my speaking failed. He pushed the ground with his legs even harder, trying to leave his doubt in the kicked-up snow behind him. Of course he was powerless. The pain in his chest told him so. He was having a heart attack from all the running.
Yeah?
At best he would be useless, and at worst he'd be a liability. He recalled the binding spell placed on him at the church. Didn't matter. His body told him he'd regret being torn to pieces less than if he did nothing.
Okay.
Not once did his legs fail him as he ran through the woods, though it felt as though his heart could at any moment. His weakness screamed at him from within. Just like back at the amusement park. He was beyond reason or circumstances now. Ultimately, just want to help her. That was all he really desired. His heart pounded with vigor. As he ran through the dark, wintry forest, only one thing gnawed at his mind. Not concern for the girls, nor anger toward Touko. The red roses bursting forth from her limbs. Screams of agony like childbirth. The harsh reality of something beautiful dying. The nightmare was tenacious. Never again. Never, ever again did he want to see something like that again. If he could help it.
Yeah.
Just ahead was the forest clearing. The moonlight shone on the old school building like a spotlight. Once again, those thoughts crept back. He couldn't bear seeing something like that again. That was why he ran. But if he had to face it a second time, how could he stay calm?
Yeah.
With that thought in mind, he arrived at the clearing. Somehow, his frantic breathing, his rising and lowering shoulders, stopped. No exhaustion, no inertia, just blackness.
Blankness.
That too. Like his mind was frozen in time. This was the second time he felt like this.
Yeah, you were a little late.
But the nausea and dizziness from the first time. Pathetic whining of the last few weeks. The doubts clouding his mind. They were all gone. Displaced entirely from his mind by an even stronger emotion. Unbridled rage.
Hopefully.
His heart pounded with the force of a sledgehammer. It was a primal sound, long enough to bring him to his senses.
Loud enough.
That too.
Yeah.
Soujuuro stopped in the clearing, letting out a deep but steady exhale.
Stepped into the...
I said,
stopped.
Whatever. Although his eyes were locked with the blonde-haired boys, his concentration was focused inward. Be calm. Be calm.
Yeah.
Every fiber of his being worked to control his breathing. The clearing told the story of Aoko and Alice's crushing defeat.
Yep.
Aoko was lying face up in the snow, her right leg bright red and crushed at the thigh. Her eyes were glazed over, but Soujuuro could tell she was still bravely fighting. Judging by her spluttering, she'd taken a hard blow to her chest or back. Soujuuro deduced it was most likely both.
The chest and then back hitting the ground.
Alice's injuries seemed less serious than Aoko's, but she lay motionless on the ground nevertheless. She was lying across from Aoko, face down in the snow, arms out in front as though pushing herself up was too painful. Before the old school building stood the figure of the mage he'd seen before. Paying her no mind, Soujuuro began to walk forward. Feeling calmer since arriving at the clearing, he advanced toward Aoko. Touko did nothing to stop him.
I mean, yeah, well, just watching the sight, I guess.
No one noticed, but the faintest look of worry flickered in her eyes.
お兄さんもその人たちの仲間?
The child werewolf spoke amicably, confident in his victory, and perhaps also eyeing up a new meal. Soujuuro ignored him and kept walking toward Aoko. The complete disregard wiped the smile from the boy's face.
Yeah, he's less amused now.
Still, Soujuuro carried on. The beast's feelings were the last thing on his mind. Once he reached Aoko, he looked down at her with a pained expression on his face. Strangely, he was at a loss for words. After a slight hesitation, all he could manage to say was...
What?
Leaving without saying goodbye.
Yeah.
His awkward remark was half scolding and half affectionate.
I mean, yeah, this seems unbelievably stupid.
Despite the pain in her stomach, Aoko was able to throw an insult his way. His voice brightened as if buying her bravado. The truth was that she barely had the strength to live. Despite that, Soujuuro looked like he wanted to respond in his usual way. Something like, "See, Aozaki, you're too tough to die even when someone kills you. People die when they're killed, but you don't."
Yeah.
As soon as she tried to speak, she ran out of breath. Soujuuro heard her loud and clear this time. He might have looked absent-minded, but he knew exactly how dangerous the situation was. Aoko knew because his carefree-sounding words didn't match his expressionless face.
I doubt he's thinking about much of anything right now.
Before she could say doing, she coughed painfully. Soujuuro pressed his finger to her lips and nodded. Aoko couldn't quite believe it, but it looked as though Soujuuro had gestured to her not to speak. Aoko didn't know what to say. She could only look up at him, amazed and awed. The werewolf stared at them, visibly frustrated. After all, he believed himself to be the noblest of all creatures. Ignoring him was treason, punishable by death. Had Touko not been there, he would have sunk his teeth into Soujuuro's neck by now.
But I guess Touko wants to see how this plays out or something?
He was sure he'd been intimidating enough. However, his prey didn't show any signs of fear. It's hard to imagine, but maybe, just maybe, this guy didn't view him as a threat.
まあ、誰でもいいんだけど、筋張った肉は歯ごたえがあっていいし、何より食い出がある。先にそのお兄さんから始めても構わないよね。
The boy wolf called out once again. Still not responding, Soujuuro raised a hand to his nose. Cool, calm, collected. Paying no mind to the boy, yet keeping an eye on him.
The blood on the snow?
Everyone present was confused. No one seemed to be able to smell anything but him.
へえ、何が匂うっていうのかな、お兄さん。
Beo's voice retained his usual arrogance, but was tinged with impatience. I smell a little shit who needs to die.
I don't know.
The boy was unable to hide his irritation at being ignored. Finally, Soujuuro turned to face the boy, just a short distance from him.
これだから犬は嫌いなんだ。
Oh.
His voice was filled with disgust and contempt. Soujuuro was mainly speaking to himself. But the werewolf boy had never felt so insulted.
That probably is the worst insult he's ever heard.
Even if this wasn't Soujuuro's intent at all.
You gonna transform?
In a moment, the wind picked up, perhaps signaling a change in the werewolf's mood. A fiery gale whipped around, carving patterns in the snow.
Soujuuro!
Sensing he was about to be killed, Aoko desperately tried to move. But her broken body wouldn't respond. After hearing Soujuuro's insult, Alice was unsuccessfully struggling to get to her feet too.
Oh, well, she's awake.
In complete contrast, Soujuuro stood there, firmly and unfazed. The little blonde boy's well of patience had run dry.
そうか。要するに、僕が子供だからって舐めてるんだね。
That really is something that a normal
お
human would
兄
do.
さんは。
Yeah. Oh.
His time playing human was over. Enraged, the boy transformed. He grew larger and larger, golden fur sprouting from his pale flesh. His mouth grew razor-sharp fangs, his hands grew claws. Drawing from the magical energy in the air, he transformed into a preternatural beast. A wolf in the shape of a human.
Oh, he's not listening to you right now.
Touko yelled at him, but the werewolf did not respond. He only huffed deep breaths of hot air. That was all Soujuuro could say in response to the boy's metamorphosis. Such a transformation was the stuff of nightmares. What was worse, the beast now towered above him. It was enough to make anybody question reality itself.
Yeah, amazing, yeah.
Seeing his prey's reaction satisfied the werewolf, and his maw twisted into a satisfied grin. He was a strange one, this guy, but meat was meat. However, the beast's arrogance was short-lived.
Was it?
The prey breathed a sigh of exasperation before speaking.
Oh my god!
You could hear a pin drop, even in the snow.
Okay.
Aoko, Alice, and Touko were all dumbfounded. Were they really seeing a human, not just stare a werewolf down, but insulted to its face?
I mean, he really has no idea what he's dealing with, not even remotely.
They simply could not believe it. It was too late. Any trace of the wolf's pride or dignity faded away. The onlookers finally realized that the wolf was serious.
Beo, 殺すな!
Why not?
But Touko's command fell on deaf ears. The wolf prepared to lunge, his emerald eyes fixed on Soujuuro not 30 feet in front of him. A mere 30 feet. A half second was all he needed. Another half second to bring his claw down and slice his prey from head to toe. A roar of joyous, unbridled fury echoed far and wide. It was the only warning the werewolf gave as he exploded towards Soujuuro, that and telling him he was already dead.
Well, no, that warning, telling him he was already dead was his only warning.
1 second. A golden blur swept forth in a furious gust, too fast for eyes to follow. In the face of unworldly speed, there was only one thing to do. Soujuuro stepped forward, a silent shadow opposite the beastly silhouette of the incoming werewolf. He needed exactly 3 paces. He bet his entire life on around 3 feet of distance. In the blink of an eye, death would be upon him. Yet he didn't show the slightest indication he intended to avoid the lunging behemoth. The wolf's forelegs slammed into the ground with an earth-shaking fury. His back muscles tensed up so much they seemed barely contained in his frame, and he swept a raised paw downward. Soujuuro's small step neatly evaded the claws. But he had a different motive. He was merely positioning himself for the next move. Boop the snoot!
Yeah.
His intention was never to avoid anything. From the beginning, his mind was focused on but one thing. One point to aim for. One mind. One breath. He picked the perfect opening in the wolf's torso. The precise microsecond between contraction and relaxation. That one point alone was the crack in the dam of life.
Oh, he's got an actual punch?
He punched the werewolf in its chest with his feeble human strength.
Oh, God.
There was a dull thud and a burst of blood. The twisted flesh and gore were all Soujuuro's own. The werewolf's raised claw convulsed. From an insignificant impact, the beast's body was the first to collapse, then his spirit.
What happened?
There was a moment of utter incomprehension. The wolf opened his jaws to try and pull air into his lungs. Gasping, he began to topple forward. The slender figure slipped around to his flank.
Ooh, nice, look at that.
The next blow pierced him like a spear. Ignoring his mangled left arm, the silhouette whirled around and drove his right elbow into the collapsing werewolf's back. There was another muffled impact.
Probably his elbow shattering.
The second strike penetrated to the exact same spot the first strike had, crushing the beast's heart.
Did it?
This time, the blood that flew into the air belonged to the gasping wolf.
Huh.
Dude, what a fucking boss!
Jesus Christ.
Love to see Shiro try to pull this shit off. Or Shiki, for that matter.
I guess he fought bears on the mountain or something? Huh.
The werewolf fell to the ground, choking on his own blood.
Yeah, like he caught him like between breaths or something from the front and collapsed from the back while he was winded or something?
He did not get up.
Because he's still...
He showed no sign of life.
What?